will now call the meeting of November 2nd, 2016 to order. Please stay silent while Mr. Hobeck reads roll call.
Jose Rosario.
Here.
Maria Zapaznik. Here. Lori Cepeda. Here. Thomas Lima.
Here.
Patrick Hurd.
Here.
Catherine Almeida. Here. Leandro Alvarez.
Here.
Taylor Dean.
Here.
Luisa Davidia. Gabrielle Enright.
Here.
Shayla Mello.
Here.
Vanessa Ruggieri. Here. David Sears.
Here.
Daniel Seavey.
Here.
Cassidy Stewart. Scott Kane.
Here.
Michelle Brophy-Behrman.
Here.
Mark Paolucci. Nicholas Lima.
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now move on to item 2, approval of the agenda. I am seeking a motion to approve the agenda of November 2nd, 2016. Motion from Representative Sears, second from Treasurer Lima. Is there any discussion on the agenda? President Mario.
I'd like to motion to move item 4, speakers, to after officers' announcements.
Motion from President Rosario, second from Deputy Speaker Almeida. Is there any discussion? Secretary Spada.
I think it would be better to move it to whenever the speaker arrives instead, so just think of that when we go to vote and not the speaker, not a motion to change it.
Is there any further discussion? No discussion, move to a vote. All in favor of moving the speaker's agenda item to after the reports agenda item, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Any abstentions? And with that, the amendment fails. Is there any further discussion on the agenda? Secretary Spada.
I'd like to make a motion to move speakers to whenever Representative Berger arrives.
Motion from Secretary Spada, second from Deputy Speaker Almeida. Is there any discussion? No discussion, move to a vote. All in favor of amending the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Abstentions? And with that, the agenda is amended. Is there any further discussion on the agenda as amended? No further discussion, move to a vote. All in favor of approving the agenda of November 2nd, 2016 as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Abstentions? With that, the agenda is approved. We now move on to item 3, approval of the minutes of October 26, 2016. I'm seeking a motion to approve the minutes. Motion from Representative Dame, second from Representative Seavey. Is there any discussion on the minutes? With no discussion, we move to a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes of October 26, 2016, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Abstentions? With that, the minutes are approved. We now move on to item 4, open forum. Is there anyone here for open forum? Is there anyone here for open forum? Is there anyone here for open forum? With no one here for open forum, I declare the open forum period closed. We will now move on to item 5, officers' announcements. President Rosario.
Hello everyone, thank you guys for coming to this meeting. I only have one announcement. If you have not signed up for a college or SCG committee, please make sure you do so. You're supposed to be on one college committee and one SCG committee. Later on in the meeting, I'll be reading out a list of people that still need to join whatever committee they need to join, but just keep that in mind. And if you have questions as to what committees are available, please come see me at some point before the next meeting so that we can get you approved. That concludes my announcement.
Thank you. Vice President Spazio.
Hey everyone. So next Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. is going to be the class election for junior class secretary and the one more freshman Parliament representative to be done in the dining center. We're moving the table and the stairs like usual. Please spread the word. We need people from those two classes to come out and actually vote. And then for the new members of Parliament, if they haven't gotten a Parliament t-shirt, please come see me after the meeting. I realize that I missed like 3 or 4 of you, and I don't want you guys to go to an event that Parliament is hosting and everyone else has t-shirts and you know. So just see me after the meeting. Thank you.
Secretary Spada.
Thank you, Speaker Hurd. On the note of filling up committee seats, I have 5 Parliament seats open on the Student Organizations Committee. We're getting a lot done. We've already started the invitations and party favors for the holiday party, so you can mark your calendars for December 7th. It's going to be at 7 o'clock at an Italian restaurant, sorry if I mispronounced this, called Osteria Toscana, and it's over in Johnston. Really good food. There will be cake and lots of good stuff, so make sure you save the date and come out. It's a non-Parliament Wednesday, so you should all be free. President Rosario and I attended the NAACP Gala this past Friday. Really interesting speakers, and hopefully we can look into having some of them come speak to us here at Promet about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Treasurer Lima.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just briefly, I have one open seat for Parliament member on the Finance Commission. So if you're interested, please file a committee appointment application. And aside from that, the next meeting, I'll have another report on the funds that Finance has allocated so far this year, and a report on the status of the general fund. And that's it for my announcements.
Thank you. Next up is Speaker Hurd. I have 2 leaves. My first leave is from Daniel Seavey. He writes, I am seeking a requesting of leave of absence for October 12th, 2016 meeting as I was sick and overslept that evening. As a result, I woke up after the meeting had concluded. I'm seeking a motion to approve this retroactive leave. Motion from Representative Sears.
So moved.
Second from President Rosario. Is there any discussion on this leave? No discussion, we move to a vote. All is in favor of approving the leave, the retroactive leave, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Abstentions, Representative Seavey abstains. The,
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Vice President Spencer also.
I mistake, please. President, Vice President Spencer.
I abstained.
Oh, you abstained. That the retroactive leave is approved. My second leave, Joan, can you please pass along my email to the speaker that I will not be able to attend the meeting on Wednesday, November 2nd. I have a family matter to attend to on Wednesday. Thank you, Mark Palucci.
So moved.
Motion from Representative Lima, second from Representative Dane. Is there any discussion on this leave? No discussion, move to a vote. All in favor of approving Mark Palucci's leave, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Abstentions? And with that, the leave is approved.
Point of personal privilege, I'd like to motion for a late leave for Representative Davidio, this hour roll call.
Motion from Treasurer Lima. Second from Representative Sears. Is there any discussion on this late leave? No discussion, move to a vote. All is in favor of approving a late leave for Representative Davidio, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Representative Davidio abstains. Is there any other abstentions? With that, the late leave is approved. For my announcements, I just want to go over quickly points of information, or as they're known in the 11th edition of Robert's Rules, requests for information. So what we've known as points of information are meant to be a request for information. So you direct a question to the speaker to be directed to another parliament member, or I will ask if anyone in the room can answer the question. That's the general thing. They're not supposed to be used for just stating a fact relevant to the discussion. But we've always used that as far as I've known it to be. So keep that in mind during our meetings, but at the next semester, we will be enforcing that, and points of information will no longer be used for just stating information. And that's all for my announcements.
Point of parliamentary inquiry.
Please state your point.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What does the current SCG policy on procedures or supersedes Robert's Rules of Order say on points of information?
We have a point of information from alumni representative Lima. Is there anyone in the room?
And I can defer to answer that after the meeting. Takes some time to look it up.
Okay, your point of information is deferred. Next is Deputy Speaker Almeida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Okay, I have one announcement. The first town hall of this semester will be on November 15th at 4 to 6 p.m. in the Faculty Center of Dawn. Walk-ins are welcomed. You don't have to be there the whole time. It will be a panel of some of us so you can state some suggestions or issues you're having on campus to see what solutions are there. It's also so that we understand our goals and objectives for the semester. We'd love to see everyone there. So, thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to item 6, reports. Item A, Finance Commission minutes of October 26, 2016. Treasurer Lima.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. These finance were passed today. These minutes were passed today of the Finance Commission. If anyone has any questions they can ask during discussion, but I'd like to motion that they be approved by the body.
Motion from Treasurer Lima, second from Representative Sears. Is there any discussion on the finance minutes of October 26th, 2016? Hearing no discussion, we move to a vote. All in favor of approving the Finance Commission minutes of October 26th, 2016, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Abstentions? With that, the minutes are approved. We now move on to item B, College Ad Hoc Advising Committee. Dr. Brophy Behrman.
Hi, I didn't realize that all of this would be in here, so there's no reason for me to get up and do a presentation. But I just wanted to talk about something that I mentioned at the last couple of meetings, and that is a report that I put together with a couple of other colleagues who were charged with trying to figure out a way to deal with the problem of some faculty and some departments having too many advisees. There are departments that have a person has over 100 advisees, or there's one person who has over 200 advisees, and you clearly can't advise and do your regular job of teaching and all those other things. So we started looking into this, did a lot of looking just at different models of advising, and while we started off with this idea of trying to figure out how to deal with the overload that faculty have, we also decided that we wanted to create kind of a mission and vision goal statement, because we're really interested in having the best advising we can have on campus. So that guided us as we were going through all of the literature. So there's a really long report here, and then kind of we go through everything, and we try to go through some advantages and disadvantages of different models that we look at. But if you go to page, well, this is at the kind of at the end, and there's a slideshow. So rather than me getting up there and going through it, it's like page 1 at the very end. You can take a look at this on your own. I just wanted to kind of skip down to, you can see in our mission and vision statement and value statement, we're trying to put what kind of advising we want to provide our students. It'd be interesting to get your feedback if you think that this, these things that we're interested in make sense with students. And then we talk about the current system and some of the problems with the current system advising, and clearly faculty load is a huge one. In the faculty contract, union contract, we are we're mandated to have no more than 30. We're not permitted to have more than 30 advisees, but clearly a lot of faculty are going above and beyond. Faculty make decisions. Some say, nope, I'm not going to see anybody more than 30 students, any more advisees than 30 students. So that means other faculty end up picking up the slack because we simply can't let students go unadvised. And so there's some kind of issues there. The quality, we're very concerned about that because, as we talked about, not everybody is all that interested. Not everybody most people haven't been trained in any way. And faculty have a whole lot of other responsibilities as well, and so it's kind of a concern about how that affects quality. A lot of times faculty feel that they can't address some of the needs that advisees have when they come to them. So if students are coming and talking about, I don't know what to do, I can't get into the nursing program, and this is what I wanted to do my entire life, help me. Sometimes faculty aren't really sure how to help that particular student, or if the student has other kinds of concerns about financial aid or something. The timing of duties, we have a situation where we're supposed to be advising you when we're also getting midterms, and there's just a whole bunch of stuff happening at the same time. And it's hard if we don't even have midterm grades back to do some of the advising we want to do. And then you can see on the next page, which I guess is page 4, there's some more problems that faculty are concerned about. The one slide, I guess it would have been nice if I got to show you, is the next slide. I can't even see what that is. It was basically, the point of it is, it was a survey that I did a couple years ago to find out how interested faculty would be in attending various kinds of training sessions. And so I asked about whether they'd like to go to a training session for new advisors, or go to a training session to learn about how to use the MyRIC, or I had some other ones there, like would be willing to do like a brushing up kind of training session. Another one had to do with, would be willing to read advising tips. I've been sending out advising tips to all faculty. And anyway, there are a couple there. And what I found is, in almost no case were a majority of those respondents interested in attending these training sessions, unless it was the tips that I was sending out or online training. So that's a concern. If you have faculty who have concerns, but they're not that interested in attending. I should say that the survey I did, it had about a third of the faculty, full-time faculty responded. It's not representative of the entire faculty. However, that third who responded are those who either really love or really hate advising, probably. The next slide there is that the research suggests that the two biggest things that students have problems with on campus are parking and advising. So we all know how students feel about parking. That's pretty bad then. What we try to do is kind of talk about who the RIC student is, and so on the next page, page 5, there's some statistics about just how diverse our student body is. And we wanted to introduce that because we wanted to talk about a couple of different types of advising. At this point, I think, is this our speaker, our other speaker? Do I stop?
Yes.
Okay. What most faculty are kind of trained to do or comfortable doing is what we call prescriptive advising, which is just saying, oh yeah, you should take those classes and I'll sign off on it. Developmental advising is an approach that kind of treats advising like teaching. Students are going to come in their first year and they're going to have a lot more needs and a lot more questions, but over time they're going to become more responsible for their own decisions. And then intrusive or proactive advising is a model that's being used increasingly. It's when students are simply kind of having all kinds of problems, but they're not going to their faculty. So faculty should be aware and be looking out for students who have issues. All right, so then just the last couple things here. So looking at all these different models, that last slide on page 5 talks about the 3 basic types: centralized, shared, or decentralized. And I won't go into those, but what we have now at Rhode Island College is what's called a split model, which means OASIS is taking students, but only certain students, which are the exploring majors, and then the split is in all students with majors go to their faculty advisors. What we came up with and what we wanted to propose, what we did propose, was what we call a shared, a dual model of advising. You'll notice, if you can read those little statistics at the bottom of that slide on page 5, that only about 18% of schools, and they're mostly all small liberal arts schools, use only faculty members. Now we do use some folks in OASIS, but again, the preponderance, once you have a major, you're going to go see your faculty member. So the dual advising model, and if you look on page 6, the second slide shows what we have now. There's some results from Virginia Commonwealth University that went to a dual kind of model. But on the second slide on page 7, that's what we're suggesting, and the idea would be that all students would receive 2 advisors. They would have a professional advisor who they would see once they started, and that professional advisor would only advise students. That would be their sole job. They can handle about 300 students. That's over the course of the year. The professional advisors would be trained. They would have a master's in higher ed or some other similar kinds of field counseling, and they would be able to reach out to students intrusively to say, hey, things aren't looking so good, come see me, but also could meet with students more than once a year. Students who had majors would also have a major advisor. We thought about the kind of the term like faculty mentor, the idea being that that faculty person can serve more as a mentor for the first couple of years. Once the student declared a major, then after 60 credits, or at 60 credits, the student would go entirely to their faculty advisor. And we suggested that only because we don't know how difficult it would be for professional advisors to follow students for 4 years. If they could, it'd be great if the students had 2 advisors for 4 years. Then there's just a lot of information about what professional advisors can do. They would be trained very carefully to advise, and they would take away a lot of the kind of work that faculty don't like to do, taking care of the paperwork and all that, and really would leave faculty much more freedom just to interact with students. Anyway, I guess I'm just kind of glossing over this, but when I provided this report to the union, to the departmental representatives, there was quite a lot of feedback, a lot of questions. Several faculty who believe that only faculty should advise, and so they're against professional advising because they don't think professional advisors, they might not be as good, or they might not be as good, but faculty really want to be able to have those students from the first minute. When we tried to say that students could have both advisors, some people didn't really seem to notice that, or to pay attention to that. But I think what I found from some people, although the faculty in the meeting were mostly opposed to this idea, there were people who emailed me and contacted me, and others who said maybe if we had professional advisors for each of the professional schools, because it's these professional schools where they're totally overwhelmed, like nursing and management, education, social work. So if we had professional advisors in each school, that might be a way to deal with that. And it could also help cut down some of the load that some of those big schools have. And maybe arts and sciences wouldn't need one, or maybe just a few majors that do have a lot of students like psych and comm, justice studies, they could use professional advisors. So I don't know where this stands at this point. I know that both Dr. Sanchez and Dr. Pitt are interested in this model. We think it'll better serve the diversity of our student body and give student members 2 contacts instead of 1. But I don't know where it's going to go from here. So, thank you.
So we may begin discussion. I'm seeking a motion to approve the College Ad Hoc Advisory Committee report. Motion from Representative Dame, second from Representative Seavey. We will do discussion. President Rosario.
Right. So I know I've mentioned concern about freshmen transitioning from a professional advisor to a major advisor. I think now I'm wondering if those who are advising on majors are not interested in attending sessions about financial aid and things like that, what happens when this person transitions and then needs that information? Will they have to go, can they go back to a professional advisor, and will they have access to those things after they transition out of that program, so to speak?
One of the ideas we would hope is that the student, by working with a professional advisor, would become much more familiar with the resources on campus and would be able to take some of that responsibility on. So, okay, I have a financial aid question, now I know who to call. But there would still be things that came up that if they were only seeing faculty, the faculty still might not address. And so faculty, we do know, we can call people, we can look for answers, but we don't always feel comfortable if we're correct. I would love to see, and some schools do this, so the professional advisor is someone that students can always go back to. And as long as those professional advisors had enough time and space, then of course we would encourage that.
Representative Sears.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I appreciate the very detailed report from my colleague on the College Advisory Committee. However, I would like to voice my opposition towards the professional advisor model. And the reason being is, I believe, like it's already been discussed, those faculty members that are knowledgeable in the major and program in which the student will be consulting that advisor, but also because there are still very qualified faculty members here that are here part-time, and they're teaching 6 classes in some cases a week, whereas some of the full-time faculty members are teaching only 4 classes a week. And I believe that instead of using the money to hire professional advisors, that could be used to make some of the part-time faculty members full-time and giving them some responsibilities to advise. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next on the list is Secretary Spada.
I think the dual advising model is a great idea. In the OASIS office, we still get a lot of students who are meeting with their department advisors coming in and asking us questions about general education courses. So I would feel more comfortable meeting with someone in OASIS. And I always tell them if you're not satisfied with the advisor you've been assigned, you can always request to have a different one. But a lot of times it's just students who have more questions about certain classes or about switching programs, or if they're just still concerned with what major they're going into because they don't realize the other resources on campus that can help them decide what or how to decide what field they want. And that's information that I think the professional advisor would have, like, hey, go to the Career Development Center. This is another resource you have if you're not sure what type of career path you want to take. So I definitely support this model, and I think it would alleviate a lot of the burden on faculty already teaching classes, grading paperwork, and getting involved even with student organizations here on campus and making sure that student life is flourishing. So I definitely support the model. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Deputy Speaker Almeida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You can definitely see it, like you have in the numbers. In the school management, it becomes very hard this time of year, where I had to physically hunt down my advisor at one point. So I applaud you from seeing it from both sides of the camera lens, so to speak. My only concern with this model is if we have 2 advisors, as far as the structure of getting your advising hold, would you have to see both? And then the second would be, what happens if both are hard to find? If they have a bigger number of students because there is more of them to take on more students, would it be a problem in that respect?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Dean.
Thank you. So if these numbers are correct and most of the faculty are unwilling to attend advising classes or to better themselves to learn more about the advising process, I don't see any other choice than adopting this model, because if the faculty are unwilling to do better, then it's why should we rely on them for it? And my advising, full disclosure, is Dr. Brophy, and I've had no issues with her. She's been wonderful. But if most of, from what I'm hearing, if what I'm seeing on this, if faculty are mostly unwilling to do better, then I don't see why we should continue with them. Thank you.
Next on the list is President Rosario.
One of the things that I really like about this model is that the student, even though they're seeing a professional advisor, still has access to an advisor for their major, so they can still get those sort of career development and career opportunities, even if they aren't seeing this person, because there are, in fact, very valuable members of our faculty. In terms of becoming full-time professors, that's not necessarily something that this body can propose, because I know that there are a lot of processes to becoming a full-time professor, and it's not just monetary. So I think that in the short term, this model would provide the most benefit. We would just have to make sure that when students transition from one to another, they have the resources to feel comfortable and feel welcome. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Next on the list is, I'd like to take the time now to mention a concern of one of my constituents. He's a computer science major, like myself, but his advisor is a mathematics professor. And math and computer science are in the same department, but they're very different majors. And he feels that his advisor is very helpful. And even if he did have a helpful advisor, maybe they wouldn't be as helpful as he would like. So I think that if professional advisors were able to improve the quality of advising at all, I think that would be a very good thing for student life. Thank you. Representative DeVito.
My one comment, I guess, is that it seems like the biggest issue for faculty is that they have way too many advisees, and a lot of the pressure is being put on them to take on more advisees than they are contractually obligated to have. I was just wondering if, I didn't read through it as deeply as you probably know it, if this would take off that stress, would students continue to, if the same amount of faculty are like willingly taking on more students, is that really gonna, you know, alleviate the issue of not being able to spend quality time with an advisor and spend it looks like your junior and senior year with someone who's really invested in, you know, making sure you're on the right track. That's my one issue, because that seems to be a bigger issue that would affect students, but also be really difficult for faculty to manage as well.
Representative Sears,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Request for information.
please state your request.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My public administration major and labor studies minor is coming out in me when I ask this. The AFT, have they taken a stance on any of the models, and do they recommend any of the stated models?
Is there anyone on the body who can answer this request for information? Dr. Rupert.
The AFT has just heard the report, they've been given the report in the last couple of weeks, and, you know, they haven't, again, those people in attendance who spoke up negatively towards it for the most part. As one, so, I don't know if I'm getting to that, but that's, they haven't done a vote or anything like that, so.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any further discussion? With no further, President Rosario.
I would just like a motion for a 2-minute recess, Mr. Speaker.
Motion for a 2-minute recess from President Rosario, second from Deputy Speaker Almeida. Is there any discussion? I don't think it's discussable.
Do we have to, at this point of information, do we have to accept the advising committee report before we go on recess?
Yes.
Yes.
The point of order is taken. We have to continue the motion until it's finished, then we can motion to recess.
Was his motion seconded? Could he just withdraw it?
Which motion are you referring
His motion to recess.
to?
I believe if there was a second, so you just withdraw that.
Would you like to withdraw your motion? Motion is withdrawn. Representative Bain.
Never mind.
With no further discussion, move to the vote. All in favor of approving the College Ad Hoc Advising Committee report, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Abstentions? With that, the report passes. President Rosario.
Motion for a 2-minute recess, Mr. Speaker.
Motion from
Second.
President Rosario, second from Representative Dame. Is there any discussion? I do not believe it's discussable. Move to a vote. All in favor of recessing for 2 minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Abstentions? And with that, we are recessed for 2 minutes. We will rejoin at 7:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will move on to speakers. Aaron Rugenberg, State Representative, District 4. Please stand and within the view of the cameras so we can see them, and please.
Well, thank you so much. I want to thank President Rosario for inviting me and all of you for having me. And I want to just say, I don't want this to sound like, I don't think it does, sound patronizing at all, but like just from sitting in here, the quality of this meeting and the debate as a state representative, like this is significantly higher than what I usually see at the State House. I don't know, I'm very impressed by all of you. So, good evening. I'm Aaron Regenberg. I'm a state representative here in Providence, and I wanted to come by to let you know about and ultimately solicit your support, either as a body or as student leader individuals, for a campaign that folks from around the state have started to come together to organize in support of legislation that I'll be introducing in the coming legislative session for tuition-free public higher education here in Rhode Island. I probably don't have to like ramble on about why this issue is important. I'm sure everyone here can speak with as much expertise and as much passion or much more than I can about this, because we're all young people, and so we're going through it. I'm sure most people here, like I do, I know a friend or a family member who has had to spend many more years getting their degree than they wanted to because of the cost, who's had to drop out for some amount of time because of the cost of school, who is, terrified about this debt burden that is building up and that may impact our ability to do what we want to do after college. I don't think it's hyperbole when people say student debt crisis. It is a crisis. It's affecting our generation, it's affecting our economy, and from my perspective, the state of Rhode Island, our state government, has a large degree of responsibility for what is going on. There has been a level of disinvestment by the state in public higher ed over the last 10 years. We're putting in something like 23% less right now in public higher ed than we were 2008 before the recession. We are, at the bottom of almost every 50 state list for level of funding for public higher ed, for the level of student debt burden that young people are going through. So, it's getting to this crisis level, and it's time that someone do something about it, or some movement do something about it. So for me, I want us to not just have the power to say stop. We need to stop this disinvestment, but actually go to the next level and say we need to begin a real conversation about investment in our next generation in higher education. I think that Rhode Island could be a leader across the rest of the country, inspire other states by putting out there as a bold idea tuition-free public higher ed. But that's not just going to happen, obviously. It's going to take, as I said, I used the word movement, it's going to take a real movement, some real organizing in order to win change like that. I think that real change is totally possible, but it's not going to come easy. And so we are, as I said, we're working to sort of build a tuition-free Rhode Island coalition across the state. We're not just reaching out to students, we're talking to faculty, we're talking to labor, we're talking to other organizations. But if we're going to be successful in changing this conversation and winning some real change, it's pretty apparent that young people are going to have to be the backbone and the vanguard of this push. And so I've been having some great conversations with some awesome student leaders, a couple of them are in the room, about this issue here on campus at RIC. And there's a sort of, I don't know what to call it, but a group that's sort of informing that has a plan for how to begin this organizing on campus, and that can then channel and bringing that energy up to the State House when the legislative session starts in January. It's very exciting for me to watch that passion happening as a group of the leaders of this campus and student body. I wanted to let you know what's going on, get your advice, your input, your feedback, and ultimately see if we can get some support from the folks in this room. So that's why I'm here. I also want to introduce Dami, who is a awesome intern with Working Families Party, which is one of the organizations in this coalition. He's going to be helping organize. I don't know if you have any other comments you want to add.
No, you pretty much said everything. I just graduated from University of Rhode Island, political science. I'm kind of studying double major rather. And I'm just here to support, just here to see what really happened.
And he's got a sign-in list if there's anyone who wants to get updates and keep in the loop on this. So, okay, I'll shut up if there are questions on any of that. Happy to give thoughts.
Move to discussion. First on the list is Secretary Spada.
A question I know many people have probably thrown at you. Where's the money coming from?
Great question. So the legislation that we're working on, and I have some of my finance people at the State House right now sort of crunching the numbers, but the idea is very, very basic. We are going to take the total amount paid in in-state tuition and fees at RIC, CCRI, and URI. We're going to replace that with direct state grant funding from the general revenue budget, and we're going to pay for that revenue by adding an extra surcharge on the income tax of the super wealthy income. So as far as I can tell from meeting with Commissioner Purcell and our House Finance people, we're talking about around $200 million a year in order to have that tuition free, which is I mean, it's a huge number, but it's actually like, I was surprised by how reasonable that sounds, considering that every year, the budget that we put in place it's a list of priorities, right? And right now, we have been prioritizing tax cuts for the wealthiest Rhode Islanders, corporate welfare for, we've all heard about 38 Studios, but there's a lot of that other stuff. And obviously, you know how that goes. It's the folks who can pay for the big fancy full-time lobbyists and the big campaign contributions that get to go in there and get their little piece of the budget. But I would argue that our next rising generation is more worthy of that investment than the folks who are well connected enough to have the lobbyists to fight for those things. So that's the idea.
Next on the list is Representative Sears.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So what would classify super wealthy? Now, I know that they've talked about imposing a higher tax in regards to help pay for college or reduce student debt. On a national level with Senator Warren in Massachusetts, and now Secretary Clinton is talking about her plan when going for president. And it seems like the magic number on a federal level is $250,000 a year. Are we speaking above that, at that?
So I have my finance people right now sort of looking, and they should in the next 2 weeks. They said that they'll have the numbers for me, because I don't have the legislation drafted up yet. As soon as it is drafted, you all will be able to see it. But they're running a couple different simulations. Basically what I asked them was, tell me what bringing the level back up. So in 2006 or 7, we did a big income tax cut for the highest brackets. And so I said, bring that level back, either show me the scenario with 250 and above, 500,000 and above, and $1 million and above, and to see which of those sort of brings us to 200 million in the way that's going to sort of impact folks in the most responsible way.
Is that all? Thank you. Next on the list is President Rosario.
So I would just like to quickly point out that the grant monies that will be weighted for the first generation low income students, for this campus in specific, is very important to note. I've had the opportunity to do a lot of college advising at local high schools this semester, and one thing that I always hear is that Rhode Island College is really the only ones that offer intensive programs for first generation students like KEP and Upward Bound. So these sorts of things, I'm just kind of wondering, how would you weigh between the 3 different institutions that you mentioned? I know that you said it will be weighted by the need, but in a case like this where a majority of our students are low income or first generation, will the size of the institution matter? Will there be a cutoff?
So, I mean, every institution has sort of a natural limit as far as the number of students that they can admit. If that's what the question is. And we are putting in, because you're always concerned that you have something like this, it doesn't create an incentive for us to just accept less in-state students and more out-of-state students. So we'll be putting in, like, you have to have this level of in-state. And again, the idea around this sort of weighting for first generation low income is, again, you would have the concern of, is this going to allow for folks to, be more, do some bad things in the admissions? And so we want to, if each institution is getting additional funding for these kind of students, because I think, first generation students, they require a little bit extra services, which requires some money, or lower income students, etc. If they're being compensated for that, it's actually an incentive to recruit those kinds of students, which we definitely want to make sure is happening.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Vice President Spazio.
Would this include covering for free tuition for students, like subsistence, like housing and food, the meal plans? Even though they're in-state students, I know plenty of students who live on campus that live from Providence. Would that cover that for them, or would it just focus on just the tuition for the actual education?
So two parts to that. So one, we're not talking about sort of total cost, and obviously, and I very much understand tuition and fees is just a slice of the opportunity cost and just all the life living costs of going to school. But we are also not, so we're going to be formulating this as a first dollar, not a last dollar. So your Pell Grant and things that used to be able to go towards like living expenses beyond just tuition, but now in most places it's part of your tuition. You will be able to use that for the living stuff because you're not going to have to use it for tuition. Instead, there's a way you formulate it that it's we'll do in-state once the Pell Grant is the grants and scholarships are counted, but we're not going to do that.
Next on the list is Representative Dane.
So I'm in the group that's been working with him on campus over this, and we recently sent out an email to all the department chairs asking for their input for the faculty to spread around to their colleagues. We've started a Facebook group, which if any of you are interested, I can certainly get you into. And on that Facebook group, we have a template email that you can copy to send to individual professors if you're interested in having them come. We are having a meeting on November 16th in the Anchor office at 12:30 to discuss this further. Faculty, staff, and students are all welcome to attend and give their input. What we're trying to do at that meeting is to plan the launch of the campaign here at RIC, and from RIC we want to move on to the State House to lobby our representatives there. So we would welcome any input from anyone here or anyone you know who is interested on that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Secretary Cepeda.
I think this is definitely an initiative that would benefit the majority of Rhode Island college students and throughout the state. I think it's fair to think that you want to educate your young population because they're the ones that are going to be promoting this nation for the rest of the time. You want to make sure they know what they're doing, that they're educated, getting the jobs that are innovative, and leading us to be the #1 country in the world again, because at this point we've fallen so far behind. And education is a right that every person should have. So I definitely agree that tuition should be free and everyone should have access to an education, but it's going to be difficult to persuade those that are the super wealthy in Rhode Island to think I should be putting in this cut to make sure that people that are going to be working for my companies are educated, because education is power and people don't want you to have that. People want you to live in fear. One of the statistics I saw was cutting down what the cost would be per U.S. taxpayer, and I think it was about $33 per person to fund public education in all colleges across the country. And if you weigh $33 versus all the benefits of having an educated working class and blue-collar community, like it definitely outweighs the cost. You want to have people in your society that can make informed decisions and promote everything your nation stands for, so you're not in the situation we're in right now with this election. So I'm definitely for this, and I'm really thankful that you came in to talk to us about this.
Well, thank you. And I mean, I think you underscored a really important point. I do not mean to falsely present that this is going to be an easy fight, or necessarily that it will be a short fight. There are interests both in the short term, as far as my taxes, and maybe in the long term, as far as I don't know, creating permanent underclasses that don't want this, and that's why this organizing that we're talking about is so important. I've only been at the State House for 2 years now, but from the time I've been up there, and certainly the stories I've heard, there have been some big issues that folks thought this is never going to happen, and it didn't happen until we had the sort of mobilization of the movement, filling up the State House, knocking on doors in folks in legislators' districts until it felt inevitable. And so that's what we're going to need to build on this. One more short point relating to what you said, talking about sort of the national perspective. Depending on what happens next Tuesday, we know that Secretary Clinton has put together a debt relief, debt-free tuition plan, and if she wins, if the Senate gets retaken by Democrats who support that kind of plan, there may be a world where there's some national legislation, or at least there's a chance for something national. And we see this whenever there's a national push. It always helps when there are state pushes happening at the same time. There's this interplay, and it creates more pressure on, on congressional folks from a particular state to know what's happening in their own state. So I'm excited about this because I think we could do this in Rhode Island. We could change the conversation here in Rhode Island and win real policy change in Rhode Island. But it's also kind of cool that we can be part of a larger national movement. I know that there are some other state campaigns starting around this across the country, and so I think this is the time to sort of build that.
Alumni Representative Lima.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, thank you for coming tonight and bringing this initiative to the body's attention. It's something that personally is very near and dear to my heart. As the alumni representative for this body, I started Brown College back in 2004, and if I measure that time to now, tuition has more than doubled at this institution. And for the students and demographics that come to this institution, that's really been a tough pill to swallow. During my time as a student here, there was actually an unprecedented mid-year tuition increase, which was very difficult for a lot of students to absorb, and in fact knocked a lot of students out of the college in the middle of the year. And this body itself in the past has taken on direct advocacy to try and either freeze tuition hikes or even reduce tuition at the college, including demonstrating at the State House back when I was the speaker of this body in 2009. That said, the number that you mentioned of $200 million, so just so the rest of the body is aware, that only represents 2% of the entire state's budget of $9 billion or so. And when you look at how the state budget has increased from $6 to $9 billion just within the last decade or so, 2% is not a huge sum of money. It's money that can be found. It's money. It's not a kind of $200 million. It sounds like an outrageous figure, but it's not an impossible figure to try and make up, to make something like this a reality, or even chip away at the rising cost of in-state tuition here. I did have a couple of questions. One of them actually was already answered, and that was in regards to the financing for this proposal. But my other question, I think, is in relation to its feasibility. I've seen a lot of palm cards around the state, and lowering college tuition isn't necessarily on many of them. I was just wondering, what, other than obviously getting the support of a body like this, and I think you would certainly find it, and certainly find the students on campus supporting this near unanimously as well. But what would you do to make this initiative a priority for legislative leadership, not only in this session, but in sessions in the future?
So that is the real question, right? Most of my colleagues, I have legislative colleagues who understand this issue either because their kids are going through school right now, or they're from a community where they know folks, a lot of people have this trouble. But by and large, there's a lot of well-to-do old white lawyers in the General Assembly, and a lot of them, went to school back in the day when, I could work a part-time job and get through school debt-free, and I don't know why these lazy kids can't do the same thing nowadays. So it is going to take a concerted effort on a couple fronts. One is getting the compelling stories that I'm sure all of us have heard and many of us have personally ourselves to tell, getting those stories in front of those legislators through grassroots lobbying up at the State House, through testifying in committee hearings, through contacting folks' own senators and reps and saying, I'm a constituent, I vote, I'm a voter, and by the way, I'm going through this. So it's going to take all of that. I think it's going to take a more general sort of putting this onto the public agenda. There's in organizing, what you want to do is you want to sort of polarize the situation and make it so that people are talking about the issue. And so we're going to want to do actions and things that get media attention, whether they're a big rally at BRIC to kick this thing off and get some journalists here to cover it, whether they're creative direct actions at the State House or otherwise, so that people are hearing about it and then they're talking about it, and then now, okay, this is on the agenda. Whereas before, what was on the agenda was like, how are we going to give, you know, CVS another tax break or whatever. Now we're talking about this because these people are in front of us. So it's gonna be a lot of work, but you know, it's been done before on issues as challenging than this, and I think we could do it again. One comment going back to your comment about the organizing around tuition hikes, because I think one thing that I want to just make clear in this, because I from what I've heard, and again, this is before my time, but there have been some sort of anti-tuition hike pushes that I feel like, or I've been told, some people felt sort of pitted students and faculty against each other, because we've got, on the one hand, underpaid as far as sort of regional averages faculty, and so they say we need to be fairly compensated, but then students are going to get whacked again, and so it's like pitting each other against each other. What the idea of this legislation is to bring the spotlight back to what is the real issue, which is not these faculty members are so highly paid or these kids aren't willing to pay. It's that the state has been disinvesting for the last 20 years. That's where the focus should be, and that's what we need to that's sort of one of the big strategic goals of this. In the first year, to be honest, I don't think we're going to pass anything really significant in this first year. But what we can do that is hugely significant is change that conversation, bring the focus back on public investment in a way that hopefully in the next year we can have a real serious conversation about let's pass this thing.
Thank you. Next on the list is Deputy Speaker Almeida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As someone who transferred, in changing from one demographic to another, this is probably one of the hardest working student bodies there is, trying to multitask with a full-time or a part-time job on top of going to school full-time. So I do applaud you for trying to put this in motion. My only question is what happens after? So if this does pass, what's going to happen to the students who, if it happens mid-year, is it going to get debt relief? What happens to the students who just graduated who are paying $14,000 or $8,000 or $2,000? Do they get some kind of debt relief program, or is this it when you're in, you're in?
I think unfortunately an initiative like this, it's when you're in, so it's a very good point. There's a whole generation of folks walking around with unbelievable student debt, folks, alumni of these institutions, and making it tuition free. I can hear people saying that's great, but it doesn't help me with all the stuff that I've accumulated. And there are some limited state level things that can be done for student debt that I think we need to be having a conversation on. Unfortunately, I feel like most of that is at the federal, like it's federal policy for sort of current student debt, the rates and all of that stuff. So as a state legislator, my focus is like, what can we do here in the state? And so, if we pass this thing, first of all, it won't go into effect immediately because the tax increase will happen, but those revenues won't all come in instantly, right? It's the revenues over a year. So it'll be, if we pass it, then it'll be the next year that would start. So if you're a senior right now and you're thinking, how does this help me? I guess it's what I would say is we need to think about the broader community and our family members and friends and brothers and sisters, and how this is going to change life for the next generation.
Next on the list is President Rosario.
So this isn't really a question, but more a show of support. In a recent meeting with a congressman and the president of Rhode Island College, President Sanchez, Secretary Cepeda and I sat down, and we were informed that college debt is actually becoming the highest debt in the nation. We're reaching, if we haven't already, at least $1 trillion, which is absolutely disheartening. We got to hear student stories on this campus about how that's directly affected them and their families in past generations. That being said, I really do think that there are huge benefits to this program. And in terms of debt relief, I know there are bills that are going to be proposed to Congress soon that talk about debt relief programs. So all of these things together are all about making sure, like Secretary Cepeda said earlier, that education is a right and not a privilege. We live in a country where you need education at this point to move forward. We need education to help the economy because all of this debt is not helping the economy. But education is the main form of social mobility.
Thank you. Representative Sears.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Of course, I would agree that student debt is something that should be tackled. I mean, it keeps me up at night, certainly. And I think that it is something that the General Assembly should take a look at. However, I would like to remind everyone that the General Assembly, the House leadership, is also behind bringing down corporate tax, making a more competitive business climate in the state. And other great things that they've done, like eliminating the, relieving the tax burden on Social Security benefits for the elderly. And now they're working on eliminating the car tax. So I do think that the General Assembly does deserve more credit than what has been given. But certainly the college affordability should be tackled, and I'd be more than happy to speak with your representative as well as my representative, Robert Jacquard, who's very, very good for my district in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Thank you for coming and speaking to us today.
Yeah, thank you all. Again, I would, echo Taylor. We've got an organizing meeting that folks are putting together for the 16th. We'd love as many people who, are interested in this, engaged, and want to sort of get involved in an activist kind of way to come to that, so we can start planning out what does this campaign look like, what does the kickoff look like, which I think is going to be really exciting. So, as I talk to these folks, if you want to get involved, we've got a sign-in sheet which we can just put you on the list so you can hear stuff if you want. You can pass that around. Again, I'm incredibly impressed by all of you. You rock, and thanks for having us. And I'll wait till that gets around.
Parliament is at ease while we sign the sign-in sheet.
The State House is a whole administration office where you
Go on.
Yeah, add numbers and yours too.
That's right. I need that public knowledge. I read the meeting first. I don't know.
His race against 70 is very close. It was very close last time. Yeah, I think it's going to come down to why again this time. And I'm surprised. They're very bitter with each other too. It's not like the past when Adiano ran.
Oh yeah,
He was so
Adiano's
super chill.
Adiano's a good guy.
Yeah.
He's a Tea Party. He's a Tea Party guy. He opposes everything. He votes no. He votes no on simple things like extending recess 5 minutes.
Yeah, it was like, my district is very conservative. At least
She's down there. Should have beat the district. that will be determined. She's still in, whoever gets elected next week, swears in January. Updates on the legislation.
Okay, I forgot, we're also getting together this Monday at 11:30 at the Hollyside Apartment Lounge to sort of check in on how outreach is going, figure out the agenda for the meeting on the 16th. So if there's anyone who wants to get involved in a big way or has updates from this body that they want to bring, we'll be there on Monday. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Monday, 11:30?
Yes.
Body appreciates you coming. We now move on to item 8, new business. Item A, voting for advisor, President Rosario.
Hello, everyone. So we submitted emails to all the nominated advisors. We heard back from one person who accepted his nomination. That was Professor Mark Mott. So I have in my hands the ballots. Every student gets one ballot. At the top right corner of the ballot, I need you to write 1 in the ballot number. That is super important. If the number 1 isn't there, your ballot is considered invalid. We also have a write-in option where you can write in a professor. If you're going to write in, make sure you still put an X in the box and then write in the professor's name. And you can also abstain if you do not want to vote. If by chance we don't reach majority, which in this case would be 8 votes, we will go to a second round of voting. Once the first set of ballots are completed, I will take them, go outside, Vice President Tapaznik will supervise, and we will count the ballots and come back with the results. Are there any questions about what we're doing?
Once you are done, please fold the ballot and put it up in the air so we know to come collect it from you.
And again, only student representatives, please.
Hold it up in the air when you're done, so Vice President Tapaznik.
secret ballot.
No, it's not. It's not a
Do I have everybody's ballot?
Everyone's good?
Yes. You may whisper lightly while you're ready. That's the general rule of being in this.
No, because they moved 4 down to 7. And then we have new business.
Yep, that's a standing, yes.
No, I didn't have it back on. I didn't have it back on that meeting.
Okay, thank you.
What about the calendar?
roll. Oh, 17? No, Christine will be away or something.
There you go. Session is a for balance.
You may ask the presiding officer.
What was the last thing? Is it an introduction?
What? We can't do well, I am happy to announce that we superseded the majority vote, and our appointed advisor will now be Dr. Mark Mott. So he will receive an email tomorrow morning announcing the results. We had 3 write-ins and 1 invalid ballot. So yeah, those are the results. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so there were 10 votes for Dr. Mark Mott. There was 1 write-in for Dr. Marissa Weiss. There were 2 write-ins for Bernie Sanders. And there was 1 invalid. Excuse me. And there was 1 invalid ballot.
Is that all?
That concludes this item.
Thank you. We will now move on to item 9, updates and remarks. Item A, administration update, Dr. Scott King.
No report.
Thank you. We will now move on to, because of Dr. Loki Behrman's early standing leave, we will move on to staff update, Mark Bellucci. Mark Bellucci has a leave. Now move on to alumni update, Mr. Nicholas Lima.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'll keep my announcements brief. Nothing too much going on the alumni front. I emailed back and forth with Director Alba earlier this week and spoke with a couple members of the alumni board. Nothing too big coming up in by way of events or anything that this body is of interest in, but there is a young alumni committee meeting, as I mentioned at the last meeting, coming up in about a week and a half, which I'll be attending, and I'll report back to the body on the attendance and discussion from that meeting. Beyond that, just want to remind everyone, of course, that Election Day is coming up on Tuesday, and I hope you all will take an opportunity to vote, and also to, between now and then, look at all the candidates, the ballot questions, particularly the higher education question that will benefit the University of Rhode Island, and vote accordingly. That concludes my updates and remarks. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Now move on to item 10, appointments, resignation, vacancies. President Rosario.
Okay, so we do not have any appointments, unfortunately. That saddens me. Hopefully people are recruiting friends to join committees and commissions, both college and SCG. However, I do here have a list of representatives that need to either join one committee or need to join both. So I will now read them. Please hold any questions till the end of the meeting, and we can address them personally, so it doesn't turn into a full discussion. Okay, Representative Dane needs to join a college committee. Representative Enright also needs to join a college committee. That appointment application is not found. Representative Mello also needs to join a college committee. Both of your choices were filled. Representative Sears needs to join a college committee. And Representative Stewart needs to join both a college and an SCG committee. That concludes
Is there any motion? No motion, okay. So now we'll move on to item 11, issues of parliament members. Please raise your card if you have an issue you'd like to discuss. Representative Sears.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First off, I would like to not make an introduction, but let everyone know that my Ward 5 city councilman in the great city of Cranston, particularly in a great land called Knightsville, Councilman Chris Popolowskis, is here in attendance. So I'd like to welcome him. Secondly, I just wanted to update everyone since last Parliament meeting on an issue that was brought up about vector marketing. Since last meeting, I did some investigation, and as of right now, what we know is Vector has not officially been declared a triangle scheme. However, in February 2nd of 2004, a Vector firm in Arizona was charged by the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, for misleading and threatening consumers and pitched to protect their personal information, which is on the .gov website mentioned last meeting, which is the Federal Trade Commission .gov website. It did not officially mention a triangle scheme. However, other lawsuits were filed against Vector Marketing in 1990, 2003, and 2008, along with the trade suit in 2004. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Vice President Tabasco.
Hi everyone. I went to President Sanchez's town hall today during free period in Elder. We had a lot of great issues came up, and he listened to them all. He seemed to agree with the majority of them. And one student came up to me afterwards because he forgot to mention it to President Sanchez. But one concern he has is that health services is closed on the weekends. So if you're a resident and you get terribly sick over the weekend, which is very unfortunate, they have to talk to the hall director and then go from that point on. There's no one to actually go to in terms of medical assistance here on campus over the weekend. That's my main concern.
Thank you. Next on the list is Speaker Hurd. For my issue, I would like to, after last meeting, my mom asked me, oh, you're amending amendments. I was like, yeah, how'd you know that? And she said, oh, I was watching on Anchor TV. So if any of your parents or anyone you know would like to see what we do here but can't attend, maybe they would like to watch on Anchor TV. I believe the website is anchortv2.org. That's all for my issue.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Representative Dane.
So I don't know if any of you can help me with this after the meeting, but I'm trying to find an operating budget for the school, and it's nearly impossible to find any information about financials in this place. So if somebody could help me with that, I'd be really grateful. It's a public institution, and I feel like that should be public knowledge and not hidden. So thanks.
Thank you. Next is President Rosario.
So two things, everyone. Just as a friendly reminder, Representative DeVideo proposed an ad hoc committee that was approved by this body. I currently have not heard from anyone about their interest in serving on the committee, but I would strongly encourage Parliament members and non-Parliament students who believe that faculty are deserving of awards to come forward to the office and let me know if they'd like to serve on this committee. I'd really like to get them started soon. I know Representative DeVideo is anxious to start, and it's going to be some work, so we need to start relatively soon. On that same note, I also just wanted to let everyone know that we are planning a student parliament retreat. Representative Sears and I are going to be working on that. A lot of the things that we'll be covering are Robert's rules, communication, team building, but I just want that to be on everyone's radar because I'd also really love to hear if you think there are other issues within the body or within operations or just questions that you may have. I would like you to propose them to myself or to Representative Sears so that we can try to work that into the retreat.
Thank you. Representative Video.
Hi. Thank you for President Rosario for bringing up the committee that we're going to get started. I have a more concise outline. I know that the information that was passed during Parliament, though I wasn't here, was pretty vague. So I have a little more concise outline that I'll go over, of course, with President Rosario. But if anyone wants to talk to me afterwards or ask any questions, it's sort of still in its like little baby stages. So any input that you have now is probably going to be really huge input. So yeah, if anyone wants to talk to me, please do.
Thank you. Alumni Representative Lima.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I love drinking bottled water, but I also consider myself a bit of an environmentalist. I know that a lot of bottles of water on the table. I would just like to bring up to the Executive Council that in 2011-2012 session of Parliament, a resolution was passed unanimously by this body to purchase a water cooler for the student government office to be more environmentally friendly and also provide water to people as they come in. And I would just ask the Executive Council over the course of this semester to perhaps open up the minutes for that resolution and consider reintroducing a similar matter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Are there any further issues of Parliament, members? No further issues. I'm seeking a motion to adjourn. Motion from Deputy Speaker Almeida, second from Representative Dane. There's no discussion. We move to a vote. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Abstentions? With that, we are adjourned. Please stay silent and seated while Mr. Hoviak reads roll call.
Jose Rosario.
Here.
Marisa Fasman. Here. Gloria Cepeda. Here. Thomas Dino.
Here.
Patrick Hurd.
Here.
Catherine Almeida. Here. Leandro Alvarez.
Here.
Taylor Dean.
Here.
Luisa Davidio.
Here.
Gabrielle Enright. Here. Shayla Mello. Here. Vanessa Ruggieri. Here. David Sears.
Here.
Daniel Seavey.
Here.
Cassidy Stewart. Scott Kane.
Here.
Michelle Brophy Behrman. Mark Paolucci. Nicholas Lima.
Here.
Thank you. We're adjourned.